Hello there! In this series of videos, I want to go through every single canon force power that we have seen, all the way from the prequels to the sequels, or the comics, books, TV shows, all of canon. I'm sure I'm going to miss some because that's a lot of content, so let me know in the comments the ones that I've missed, but I'm going to try and cover them all. I don't know how many videos this is going to be, but with that out of the way, let's go. So first of all, I want to clarify. I don't really think that these things that we call force powers are powers. I would say as a plot device, the force itself is a power, but it's really just a power because if a writer wants a character to be able to do something that seems supernatural, you give them the force. Each of the ways in which characters utilize the force within canon or within the universe, I would say, is more just utilizing the force itself. I think training in the force can almost be seen like a sports person training for a sport. If you want to improve your overall force sensitivity in the universe or in our world, your fitness level, you could eat better, you could work out more, or in Star Wars, meditate more, maybe. Or if you want to focus on a specific ability within the force, so say mind tricks, you would then focus on that area within your training. Like in the real world, if a sports person wanted to really improve at basketball, for sake of argument, they could practice basketball and train to be a basketball player. And yes, it might positively affect other areas of their kind of sporting ability because they're just improving overall fitness. But really, the area that they are really improving in is basketball. And in Star Wars, the area that they would really be improving in would be mind tricks. We've seen in the universe of Star Wars that different groups of characters utilize the Force in very different ways. So I've said that a Jedi could improve their overall Force ability, so they could improve in every single area by meditating. Or if they really want to improve in one area, they can pick that area and specifically train that area. And they might have natural abilities in certain areas, but them training their overall Force connection, their attunement with the Force, is not going to improve in drastically different areas, say Night Sister magic. And so I think it's important to make the distinction that different groups of users utilize the Force in very drastically different ways, which kind of means that even if they improve their connection to the Force, they wouldn't necessarily be improving in a very, very different aspect of the Force, like a Jedi isn't going to improve their ability to use Night Sister magic, or a Night Sister isn't going to improve their ability to use the aspects of the Force that the Jedi use. As the title of the video suggests, in this video of the series, we'll look at the ways in which the Jedi or generic light side Force users utilize the Force. And by generic light side Force user, I mean someone like Ahsoka, someone who isn't necessarily a Jedi, but utilizes the Force in a similar way to the Jedi. First, I want to look at telekinesis. Telekinesis is the ability to apply a physical force, just like sitting on a chair is applying a force to the chair, applying a physical force to a object, a person, a creature with your mind. So, for example, force pull, force push, force lift, or force pull back down. That's not got an official name. Force slow or force freeze, force crush, force choke. Although obviously force choke isn't a light side use of telekinesis, it is still telekinesis. Really, anytime a character moves an object with the Force, or prevents an object moving with the Force, builds an object with the Force, or destroys an object with the Force, that's telekinesis. And a couple kind of times we've seen it, or famous moments where we've seen it. Obviously, Yoda lifting the X-wing from the swamp is telekinesis, and Rey in Episode 9 when she's pulling back the shuttle that she thinks Chewbacca is on, telekinesis. Many, many others. It's probably the most common use of the Force that we see within Star Wars. I will also just mention a couple others that kind of are telekinesis, but it's not applying a force in the same way that sitting on a chair is applying a physical force. So, first of all, Kylo Ren, when he freezes a blaster bolt in Episode 7, obviously you can't stick your hand out and free blaster bolt, or stop a blaster bolt with your hand, because the blaster bolt would just hit your hand and the energy would go into your hand and hurt your hand. But you are still applying a force to the blaster bolt to keep it stationary. And the other one I will mention is in Cavan Scott's audio drama Dooku Jedi Lost. It is now also a book. Yoda and a couple other Jedi basically prevent a wall of fire from burning them. So they form basically like a fourth wall almost. They are applying a force to the flames to prevent the flames getting closer. Although obviously, again, you can't stop flames by pushing on them with your hand. Your hand would just go through and you'd get a burnt hand. But you are still applying a force, or they were still applying a force, using the Star Wars force. That's a lot of force, but that's telekinesis done. Okay, what other force powers, or not powers, did light side or Jedi use? There's quite a lot of them, and we'll go through them reasonably quickly. So, first of all, physical enhancement, the ability to increase their speed when they're running. They can jump higher. We see that Yoda, when he fights, utilizes the Force, so he can do spinny flippy things where he doesn't do that normally. That's why he's able to fight so different to how he normally walks around. So yeah, physical enhancement, basically improving your physical capabilities. What else? Okay, obviously the mind trick, and we've kind of seen two versions of that in canon. There's the one that we see Obi-Wan use, Qui-Gon use, or try to use against Watto. The one that we see Luke try and use against Jabba the Hutt. Basically telling someone to do something, or that they think something. Basically controlling someone's mind. There's also something that we saw in one of the reference books, so it's hardly been seen in canon, but it is officially canon, and it says that the Jedi Master Slar Den Ekin was able to cloud the minds of the living beings at the Geonosian Arena in Episode 2. What that means? Well, that you know as well as I do. I would imagine it probably means that their thought processes were dulled or something, which is why they didn't all get involved in the fight. Potentially, I'm not sure. What else? Okay, the big ones. The ability to manifest oneself after death, so Force Ghost. And we've actually seen now, after Episode 8, that Force Ghosts are able to use other aspects of the Force when they've died. So, for example, Yoda strikes the Houdini Force tree with his Force Storm lightning thing. Force Heal, which we've seen, and there's kind of two variations of this. There's the one that we saw a lot of in Episode 9. We saw Baby Yoda or the child use. So they touch the wound and heal it. They transfer some of their life essence to the creature or person that is injured. And the other version of it, which I will kind of group as Force Heal, is Kyber crystals. So Rey is able to use the Kyber crystal that was broken in the Skywalker saber because she heals it. And kind of another kind of version of healing Kyber crystals is the way that Ahsoka purifies a red crystal. So the way that a crystal is turned red is it's bled. So you bleed the crystal, but then she almost undid that process. Okay, what else? Vapard. Vapard is the second variation of the seventh form of lightsaber combat, utilized by almost exclusively Mace Windu. It uses the Force because it channels the opponent's dark side energy basically back towards them. What else? Animal kinship. Animal kinship is the ability that we see Obi-Wan Kenobi use in Episode 3 when he's riding the big lizard thing. It's the ability that Ezra uses quite a lot in Star Wars Rebels, and it basically means that you can make friends with an animal. We've got Tutor Menace. Tutor Menace is the ability to absorb, well, energy, so whether that's Sith lightning or blaster bolts, and either then utilize that energy back at the target or dissipate the energy. We see Yoda use this almost exclusively. One of the reasons for that is that the Jedi didn't really practice it and didn't really learn how to use it particularly well during the lead up to the prequels, because why would they need to learn how to fight against blasters and Sith lightning, because it had been 1,000 years of peace. Turns out Yoda's excellent planning came in pretty clutch there. We've got resilience. Now, resilience, it's not really a force power as such, but the reason that force users aren't all just throwing each other around when they fight each other is because they almost have this kind of like force shield around them to protect them from whoever they're fighting. So that's why we don't have, just fights where people are just picking each other up and throwing each other across the room, because the out-of-universe explanation is because that would not work as a concept for how two characters have a fight. The in-universe explanation is resilience, so like force resilience. We've got visions, so visions again, not necessarily a power, because they're kind of not necessarily, you don't make the decision to have a vision, it just happens. So either when they're sleeping or meditating, the Jedi tend to have visions. Say Anakin has visions, Ahsoka has visions during the Clone Wars. Lots of Jedi have visions during the course of Star Wars. Onto Mind Probe. Mind Probe is the ability to basically read someone's thoughts. So quite similar to Mind Trick, but it's kind of doing the opposite. Rather than planting a thought, you're extracting a thought. We do see the Jedi use this in the Clone Wars on Cad Bane, and we also see Kylo Ren use it on Rey and Poe. Well, he doesn't particularly succeed on Rey, but I suppose the Jedi don't succeed on Cad Bane particularly. We have the ability to sense disturbances in the Force. Yet again, not necessarily a power as such. It's almost the more attuned you are to the Force, the smaller the disturbance you can feel. So Obi-Wan feels a disturbance when Alderaan is destroyed. Yoda feels a disturbance when Order 66 is executed, etc., etc. We've got Force Sleep or Force Sedation, which is the ability to put someone to sleep using the Force. Kylo Ren uses it. That's the best example. He uses it on Rey. Another ability, kind of force power thing, is floating meditation. It's kind of what it says on the tin. The user or the person meditating floats. It is primarily light side, so obviously we've seen Luke do it and Rey do it in canon, and often objects float around them. Is it telekinesis? I'm not really sure. We don't really know much about it in canon at all. Next, we've got attuned sensors or enhanced sensors, the ability to have enhanced sensors, really, better eyesight or better hearing or whatever, just using the Force to enhance I suppose it comes under physical enhancement, which we talked about earlier. Also, the ability to feel people's emotions, so obviously dark side and light side can do this. We'll also have Force projection, so obviously Luke and Yoda do this. Yoda does it in Star Wars Rebels, Luke does it in Episode 8 when he confronts Kylo Ren. Interestingly enough, when Luke uses it, he's not projecting an image of himself at that point in time, he's projecting an image of himself when Ben knew him, and so there's no reason that in canon that a character couldn't project themselves looking like anything. So Luke could have projected himself naked against Kylo Ren. So there you go. We've also kind of got the other category, so just when a character is told to use the Force, but we don't really know how they are using the Force. So Ezra and Kanan, when they access the Jedi Temple on Lothal, both have to use the Force together. Or when Ezra accesses the world between worlds, it seems to be that when you use the Force and it's not in a particular way, it's to open a door. And now on to the Force abilities or the uses of the Force that characters are kind of born with and don't have, and other characters are unable to learn during or through training. So the first one of these is psychometry. Psychometry is used by Quinlan Voss and Cal Kestis and other characters, but the ability to touch an object and feel its history or sense its history. We've got foresight, which is used by Cypher Dyas. It is almost like Force visions, but it seems to be more vivid visions and slightly less controlled. Again, we're talking about it in powers, but in the novel or audio drama, Dooku Jedi Lost, when Cypher Dyas has a vision, because he's got foresight, it's not a particularly pleasant experience for him. So, and he can't control when he has them or not. Next is Shatterpoint. Shatterpoint is used by Mace Windu. He is able to detect kind of weak points either in a person's emotion, in a person's fighting style, in a physical object. So there's an episode of the Clone Wars where he breaks some glass using Shatterpoint because he can feel where the weak point or where he should break it is using Shatterpoint. And lastly, Force Dyad, and really we don't know much about it. I have talked about it a little bit in the past. My speculation would be that they are the people within the Dyad are almost one in the Force, and yet they are two separate bodies. But really, that's the list. I think that's pretty much it for the light side Force users. I'm sure I've forgotten some. Let me know in the comments. I may even have to make an updated list when I've been told how many I've forgotten. But that's all that I could think of for now. Thanks for watching the video. Remember to like the video, it's free. Subscribe to the channel, also free. I know how generous of YouTube, and another generous thing YouTube has done for you is they especially found a video for you bottom left hand side of the screen. You can click on that. It would support the channel, show your appreciation to YouTube for finding it for you. Yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Bye.